From the KC7 Foundation, happy to welcome to the stage Simeon Kapovi and Greg Schlomer.
All right, thank you guys so much, and thanks for joining us today. Today, Greg and I are going to be from the KC7 Foundation, and we're going to be talking about how we're using MITRE ATT&CK to create realistic cybersecurity data and transforming the way cybersecurity is taught. So hi everyone, my name is Simeon Kapovi. I'm the president of the KC7 Foundation. We're a nonprofit focused on diversity and cybersecurity. This is my 5 to 9. In my 9 to 5, I'm actually a senior threat intelligence analyst at Microsoft. So what I do every day is track Iranian threat actors, make their lives a little bit worse, and report on them.
Hey everyone, I'm Greg Schlomer. I'm the vice president of the KC7 Foundation, also a threat intelligence analyst at Microsoft on the Mystic team, and I focus on North Korean-based threats. So a little bit more about the KC7 Foundation. As Simeon said, we are a 501c3 nonprofit, and ultimately we have a diversity focus. So we're trying to empower a more diverse cybersecurity workforce of tomorrow. And really, we think the best way to do that is by empowering people with cybersecurity learning resources so that they have the skills they need to break into the field, especially from underserved and underrepresented backgrounds. So Simeon and I are both cybersecurity professionals, but we're also recent graduates, and we're pretty new into the field and pretty early in our careers. And so we've spent a lot of time thinking about those barriers that are present and sort of the challenges that someone might face as they're trying to come into this field from the outside. And one of the biggest barriers is this cycle. So if you want to get a role in cybersecurity, in any kind of analytical role, whether that's incident response, threat intelligence, threat hunting, or SOC work, you need a certain set of skills, right? You need those analytical skills that you use for the work. But to build those skills, you need access to data, right? You have to be able to get in the data, use the skills, practice things, see what works, see what doesn't. But you can't just get that data anywhere, right? You can't pull up to Microsoft and say, hey, I'm a college student, I want to learn cybersecurity. Can you give me data? They're going to be like, get lost. No, we can't do that. We've got lawyers and privacy issues with that. So if you need the data to get the skills, how can you get the data without a job, right? It's sort of this vicious cycle of need a job to get the data, to get the skills, to get the job. So how can you break in? Where can we break this cycle and get people into the field? And one really good way to do this is to just simulate the data, right? Instead of real intrusion data, we can simulate it. And this isn't really a novel concept. People have been doing this for a long time with a lot of success. But typically the way it's done is we set up real infrastructure, and then we research the attacks, the TTPs we want to model in our data, and we run those attacks against that infrastructure. Then we collect the data, the forensic artifacts, and we clean them and we put them in some sort of SIM and give people access to them. And this works, but it has some limitations, right? It's slow. It takes a long time to deploy that infrastructure correctly, to model the environment we want to have in our data. We have to research the TTPs that we'll employ in this attack, and then we have to actually find the tools and use the right techniques to execute those. And even once you put in all this work, it might take weeks, it might take months, then you have one data set. And once you've gone through that intrusion and you found all the things, there's little value in using that again for a teaching tool. So we've kind of taken a fresh approach to this in the way that we teach cybersecurity with KC7. So in KC7, KC7 is a cybersecurity game that simulates intrusions and gives people a CTF-style experience where they can analyze these intrusions and learn from it. So we're actually defining the organization, the attackers, and the TTPs that are being used in a YAML configuration file. So it's fully modular. We're going to talk a little bit more about how that works in a second. We feed that configuration to a Python-based engine, which simulates that attack as it's defined and outputs log data. So this log data is in JSON format. You can put it in any tool, and you can use that to analyze the data. And this has a lot of benefits. It sort of counteracts some of those limitations of the real infrastructure approach. It's really fast. We can build a config in a few minutes. We can model the latest TTPs almost in real time. As soon as we find them, as soon as we read publications on them, we can convert that into real data using KC7 and have that data available for learning in a matter of seconds.
All right, so what does this actually mean? So in our day jobs, Greg and I look at real cyber threat actors. We look in data to see what the actors are doing to compromise victims. We study the TTPs and say, well, these set of TTPs or attack techniques define what this actor does. And then we write reports on them. So you may have read some of the blogs that Greg and I have contributed to. But then, when you're looking at this on the other end, you see the blog, you say, okay, well, how can I look at the data that you're using to come to these conclusions? We'll say, well, you can't. You just have to take my word for it. Well, with KC7, you don't have to stop there. You can take the blog that we've written or any report. You can actually carve out the TTPs that we're talking about and use those to build a configuration file. And once you throw those against our engine, you can essentially replay and recreate the data that we were looking at originally to come up with that report. So you can essentially look at the data that we're using to find that report. So for any report that you see out there, or if you can find a set of reports about, I don't know, APT29 or APT28, right? You can carve out all the TTPs and all the techniques that they're using and use them to recreate the actor, bring it back to life. And so, okay, these guys are talking about what does this actually matter for ATT&CKcon, right? There's this organization named after the cyber kill chain. They're a bunch of frauds. Well, the truth is that our configs are actually based on MITRE ATT&CK. We started out using the cyber kill chain, but we wanted to get more granular. And so our configs are actually structured after the attack tactics, right? So if you read our configuration, it reads like a threat intel report. So we define, okay, well, here's what the actor does initial access. Here's what they do when they compromise the box for discovery. And then here's what they do when they're in the impact or data exfiltration phase. And within each phase, we have a bunch of modular actions that an actor can take. For example, they can run a process command. They can create a file. They can encrypt files. And we have all these small building blocks that you can put together to essentially recreate what an actor is doing in real data. So you can convert, the words or, the things that the actor does into things that they're doing contextually in real time against some fictitious company. And we've actually even built like building blocks, right? So we say, okay, well, this actor does this particular technique, right? You can just inject a technique that's already pre-built with a bunch of actions, and the attacker can choose some way to implement that technique on the fly, which makes it easier for us to build. We're talking about Mr. Potato Head, the Mr. Potato Head threat actor.
So yeah, what does this actually look like in practice, right? Within our configuration file, suppose we define some actor that in the discovery phase, after they've compromised the system, they run a certain set of commands, right? Like these we see on the slide here. So that gets fed into the engine, and then that is actually output in log format. And these logs look similar to, real logs you would see from a security product. I mentioned earlier, these are all just JSON blobs. So we ingest them in Azure Data Explorer. That's what we use primarily as a learning tool because it's pretty quick to spin up on. It's low cost. But in your organization, you could use this approach and ingest this data into whatever security solution you're using within your team. So on top of this, really where the gamification approach to KC7 comes in, we have the data, but we also have a CTF-style scoreboard system. So if you're brand new to security analysis, if you don't know the first thing about what to do to investigate an intrusion, we have a series of questions that will actually walk you step by step, start to finish, through that investigation. And we help you think about the right questions and the right queries to run and how to approach that investigation to come to the right conclusion. So this is an example of a question where we're actually showing a technique and then asking you to identify the MITRE ATT&CK technique ID that was employed in that log data.
Okay, so what does this actually mean for you? Well, when you're studying attack and you look at a particular technique, the way you see examples is by going to the different reference threat articles, right? But which aren't always written consistently, right? There's different varying levels of detail. Maybe they put the command, maybe they just say the actor used it. So how can I actually see and feel what it is that the actor is doing when they're implementing this technique? I know this is challenging because this is actually what we do when we're building our configs. We actually go and research these things to see what they look like, and it's really hard. Well, we're proposing a new method or a different method where you can actually go in our data. We'll tell you this is where the actor ran this technique contextually. You can actually see it in the data. You can see what the actor did before and after. And since everyone can see the same data, right? We're talking apples to apples, and we can all compare what it's like. And we have, new ways of we have a way to actually implement this over and over again for new techniques that come out.
So this all sounds great, right? You might be wondering, cool, does it actually work? Fortunately, we've been able to bring this to a lot of people. KC7 has had almost 2,500 players in a bunch of different countries all over the world. We especially spend a lot of time working with students and with those people from backgrounds that are underrepresented in our field, because we feel like we can give them this hands-on experience and empower them to actually join the field and be successful in it. So just this past summer, we had the opportunity to run a summer camp with 4th through 7th graders in Lexington, Kentucky. That's where I live, right? You think, can 4th graders do cybersecurity? You probably think no. Turns out they can, and they can actually crush it. We have a couple cool notes here. A parent reached out and said, my son hasn't stopped talking about the cybersecurity camp. He absolutely loved it, and he wants to do it again next year. So we're always talking about the skills gap, the talent shortage, right? All we got to do is go into these classrooms with 4th graders, give them this experience, and let them have fun and see what cybersecurity is all about. We had a 7th grader who attended our camp and said, I don't want to be here at first, but I'm learning new things that I never heard of, things that I never thought that I would learn. Here's an example of a 6th grade girl who's actually doing attribution, right? She looked at some phishing activity, looked at the technical log data, found the TTPs, and then pulled in some real-world evidence to say who was responsible for that attack. And then we also encourage them to have a little fun. They're 4th graders. We're like, hey, you can make posters, do what sounds fun to you. One group made a poster. We actually had some kids who were like, can I use Canva and all these slide things that we had never heard of? So don't underestimate the potential of young minds who are excited about cybersecurity.
Yeah. Okay. So this works for 4th through 7th graders, but it could also work for you, right? We're reaching people from all breadths of life. And we're really trying to give them the love for pivoting and analysis. And we think by giving people realistic cybersecurity data that they can look at, they really have that aha moment where they're like, okay, well, I think I finally understand what it is that threat actors do. I think I understand how this pivoting thing works. And I think I can understand why it's so fun to find, block, mitigate attackers. And we're really just giving people a love for, the blue team side and a love of cybersecurity. So we'll hope you join us on this journey. And we just want to thank everyone, Katie Nichols, everyone who has believed in our mission very early on and helped us get this word out to more people. And we're hoping that, together we can all create a more diverse cybersecurity industry. So thank you very much.
So 2 parts, a very genuine thank you for the great presentation, but also everything you're doing for the community. But also, I want to give you a chance to plug, what's next? I know we have an event coming up on the 28th, and hopefully I can get into that one. But how do people get involved? Is it a certain cycle, or how do we touch base?
Yeah, so we actually do free cybersecurity trainings for the community. So if you follow us on Twitter, we'll do free Saturday events. You can literally come. Anyone can just plug into us on Zoom, and you get to actually pivot and have a competition with other people in our community. We do this on a monthly cadence now. If you want to go to your local school, if you want to bring this to any diversity group or really any group and want to have an easy hackathon, we can get you hooked up with a free scoreboard and a free data set, and it's pretty much plug and play. So if you want to contribute to this, or if you want to have more events, come talk to us, and we're happy to help you get started.
You can also try it for free. You don't have to show up to an event. You can go to kc7cyber.com. The whole platform is totally free. All the modules are open and free, and you can get started right now if you're interested.
Can't think of a better way to spend a Saturday afternoon.
That's right.
Yeah, thank you. Well,